7 years ago, I got married to my husband. His sister already had kids back then. But right from the start, I felt like I wasn't really part of their family. My sister-in-law made it clear that I wasn't their aunt. She even told her kids that I wasn't their aunt. Because of this, I don't feel close to them like I do with my husband's other siblings' kids, who I treat like my own nieces and nephews. I love spending time with them and being a fun aunt. I've done things like painting their rooms and taking them on trips because I like being creative and making them happy. Even though I'm a mom now, I still love doing these things for my nieces and nephews because they're like my family, and I never really had one before. But when it comes to my sister-in-law's kids, I don't do any of that anymore. I've stopped trying to talk to them because my sister-in-law made it clear that she doesn't want me involved. I don't want to cause any drama or trouble by interacting with them since it seems like she doesn't want us to connect. Now, our kids feel jealous and left out because their cousins have cool stuff in their rooms and get to do fun things, while they don't. When my sister-in-law confronted me about it, she blamed me for making her kids feel that way. I told her it was her fault for creating a situation where I couldn't relate to her kids, and now they're the ones suffering because of it. I reminded her that she's reaping what she sowed, and her kids are the ones paying the price for it. Now she's all fired up, saying this and that. It's clear she's not happy, and honestly, I never wanted my kids to see her as their aunt anyway. The rest of the family just shakes their heads at her antics, but I know this tension isn't helping anyone. I do feel bad for her kids though. I can't help but wonder if I've made things worse. She doesn't see me as family to her kids because we're not related by blood or adoption. I don't think I'm in the wrong here, and it's frustrating to see the family dismiss her behavior. If anyone confronted me about it, I'd explain that I've always respected her role as a parent, even when she asked me to step back from being an aunt years ago. It hurt, but I understood and never crossed any boundaries. It's unfortunate that things turned out this way, but I had to respect her wishes. I didn't set these boundaries, I just followed them. When she complained to OP could have responded, "Do I know you?" But I wonder if the sister-in-law was the only daughter among the siblings. Maybe NOP being the first woman to marry into the family triggered her. Over time, as the other brothers got married and had kids, she became less aggressive, but the damage was done. The only reason the sister-in-law regrets it now is because OP turned out to be a fantastic aunt to other children, and the sister-in-law's plan backfired. Actions have consequences. You followed her instructions not to get involved. It seems like the rest of the family knows she's difficult too. Everyone here seems to have their faults. You probably aren't telling the whole story about what's going on between you and your sister-in-law. But it's not fair for either of you to involve the kids. And what about your husband? Does he also ignore his niece and nephew? Why is he supporting either of you acting this way? I couldn't disagree more. The sister-in-law made the choice to exclude OP and is now causing conflict because OP respected the boundary she set around her kids. Are you suggesting OP should have ignored that boundary? I understand your concern for her kids. Sadly, they suffer because of their mom's actions. But before you try to change anything, consider how your sister-in-law will react. She might turn any contact into something negative. Keep that in mind as you decide what to do next. This situation happened 2 months ago, but he's still upset about it. I'm a 45-year-old woman. I love my oldest son, but he's almost an adult and acts like one. In our family, everyone takes turns doing chores like cooking, washing dishes, and cleaning common areas on different days. Unfortunately, my son dislikes chores and always tries to avoid them. It's been an ongoing struggle. Washing dishes is particularly troublesome. He fills the dishwasher too much, preventing the detergent from reaching the dishes, leading to them not getting clean. I interrupted him quickly and reminded him that the dishwasher sanitizes dishes. My husband supported me, saying, if he wants dinner, he'll eat from his dishes. He often promised to wash some, but I refused, reminding him that he had the chance to clean them properly the night before. I told him to eat from them as they were or skip dinner. He yelled and threatened to make his own food, but I stood firm. Eventually he gave in, reluctantly selecting the least dirty dishes and eating quietly. I felt bad seeing him so disgusted, but I was tired of the wasted time, water, and detergent. It turned out well. His dishes came out perfectly clean afterward. However, he's still angry, and I do feel guilty now. But I'm tired of his deliberate laziness causing problems for everyone else in the house. Am I wrong? You're not wrong, and I think you handled the situation well. However, I disagree with your statement that he doesn't realize his laziness screws over everyone else in the house. He knows, he just doesn't care. He's old enough to understand the consequences of his actions, and it's time he learns. This should have been addressed sooner. If he doesn't face consequences, he won't change his behavior. Instead, he learned that even when I make a mistake, my parents will have to fix it because they need to eat too. What OP did was smart because he's almost an adult, and it's time to learn how to do things properly. The fact that he suddenly knew how to do the dishes correctly overnight shows that he was capable all along but chose not to do them properly. Well done, OP. I grew up in poverty but worked harder than anyone else to achieve success in my personal, financial, and professional life. My family often had to choose between bus fare and a meal. So when I became financially successful, many people approached me for help. I helped them out of compassion and understanding, knowing how much a small gesture can mean to someone in need. However, many of those I helped started to see me as their personal ATM. I never faced this issue with people who were already financially stable. They would have been embarrassed to ask. While I don't spoil my kids, we do live comfortably in a nice house in a good neighborhood, and I expect them to work hard and excel in school. My eldest son, a teenager, got into trouble for telling a peer that he didn't want to be friends because of his financial situation. A teacher overheard and reacted strongly. Unlike that teacher, I took the time to understand the context and facts before responding. My son then began spending time with Austin. Austin would often lament about not having money to participate in activities, so my son would sometimes cover for him. Like when they went to see Top Gun and Austin couldn't afford a ticket, my son paid for him. However, things got uncomfortable when Austin began to expect my son to foot the bill regularly. The tipping point came when they went to iHill with friends, and Austin assumed my son would pay for his meal too. While my son only ordered onion rings, Austin indulged in a full meal, dessert, and milkshake. Later, my son vented to their friends about how little money he receives from me, and yet he still has to work as a tutor, only for Austin to take advantage of his generosity. Consequently, their friends distanced themselves from Austin. A few weeks later, in class, Austin wondered why he wasn't being invited to hang out anymore. My son replied, because he's tired of covering for him. Austin responded, but I'm poor. My son sarcastically remarked, oh, so you're too poor to be friends with? Maybe I should quit school and get a job like him. This exchange prompted a call from the teacher. I clarified the context of the conversation to the teacher, as she wasn't receptive when my son tried to explain it. She labeled my son as mean and threatened detention. I informed her that I would advise my son not to serve detention for this incident and asked her what she planned to do about it. She ultimately dropped the matter. Edit. It's important to note that Austin isn't in extreme poverty. He has access to resources like last year's iPhone. He has the ability to work like other kids at their school, but chooses not to. You're not in the wrong here. Consider discussing with the head teacher the emotional toll on your son, who has been coerced into giving money repeatedly, and how the last incident bordered on theft. Your son deserves support in standing up to emotional manipulation and bullying, and he has the right to end the friendship. The teacher should have heard the whole story before jumping to conclusions. Everyone involved made mistakes here. While your son's outburst might warrant detention, it's not ideal for you to interfere with a teacher's disciplinary actions unless there's a significant issue with her approach. It might be beneficial to help your son improve how he expresses himself to avoid more serious consequences in the future. I agree, your son has the right to stand up for himself. But the way he expressed it could have been kinder. A more effective approach would have been to say something like, I don't want to be friends with someone who takes advantage of me, which addresses the real issue without targeting Austin's financial situation. Being overly confrontational with someone who feels entitled might lead to further trouble. Given the circumstances, your son's response wasn't entirely unreasonable. It was a sarcastic retort to someone making excuses for their behavior. The teacher's refusal to listen to the full story and her decision to focus on a poorly worded phrase taken out of context didn't help the situation. I know it might sound odd, but I don't think I'm in the wrong here. I just need some other perspectives on this. My brother, who dropped out of high school, recently got married to his wife, who has similar qualifications, at the young age of 19. I'm 23, just to give some context. The situation is complicated, But basically, my brother's mother-in-law pushed them into getting married because she wanted a grandchild as soon as possible. Unfortunately, my own mother went along with it, which I find frustrating. Now my new sister-in-law is expecting, which confirms my suspicions. I know I might seem disrespectful, but I'm not happy about it. We're not well off financially. My dad, who used to be assertive, didn't step in to prevent this situation. Ironically, he persuaded me against attending the college I wanted because of the high tuition fees. To cover the wedding costs, my dad borrowed money from my uncle, his brother, and now he's pressuring me to repay it because my brother and sister-in-law, being young and expecting, can't afford to. They told me they're in too much debt to get a loan from a bank, so it falls on me since I'm debt-free with savings and a job. When they brought this up, I didn't say anything. I just laughed and left. Now they're bombarding me with calls and texts asking for financial help, but I refuse to budge. It feels like we're living in completely different realities. It's not about culture or anything like that. Am I wrong for refusing to take out a loan for my family? Definitely not. Goodness, what a chaotic situation. If no one can afford to cover the wedding costs, what about the baby? It seems like they'll keep turning to you for loans they won't repay. Stand your ground. This isn't your problem to fix, so don't entertain further discussions about it. If they can't afford a lavish wedding without a substantial loan, maybe they should prioritize their resources for the baby instead. Laughing in their faces was a fitting response to such a ridiculous request. Oh, please ensure that you're the only one with access to your savings. Secure your accounts with updated passwords and avoid staying logged into online banking on shared devices. It's important to take these precautions, especially if your parents have access to personal information like your social security number and employment history. While you might believe they wouldn't take advantage of you, financial strain can drive people to make unexpected decisions. That's right. If they have your social security number, they could potentially open credit in your name, leaving you in a difficult situation. It's a quick process, but you can easily lock your credit by contacting the major reporting agencies, usually 3 of them, either by phone or online. Reversing the lock is simple when you're ready to apply for loans for things like a home, education, or a car. Their financial irresponsibility shouldn't fall on your shoulders. They need to figure out a repayment plan for your uncle on their own. Growing up, I lived with my best friend and his wife, Amanda, on I-35. While Amanda has always been a friend, I've had a closer relationship with her husband. Unfortunately, they moved out of town years ago, only returning for significant family events like funerals or weddings. A few months back, Amanda visited for her sister-in-law's bachelorette party, despite feeling uneasy about it due to her sister-in-law's mistreatment stemming from jealousy or other issues. Wanting to ease her nerves, I offered to pick her up from the airport and take her out for drinks afterward. However, I made a mistake and forgot to add it to my calendar. I had already planned a date for that night and couldn't cancel it, so I arranged for the sister-in-law's best friend to pick up Amanda and take her to the hotel. 2 days later, I met up with Amanda for drinks. She was feeling really down after her mistreatment at the bachelorette party, where everyone else seemed to ignore her. We spent a few hours chatting and drinking, and then I received a text from my girlfriend, asking me to come over to her apartment. I arranged for a mutual friend to join Amanda at the bar and keep her company before leaving. After that night, Amanda stopped communicating with me. She ignored my texts and social media messages for 3 months. Finally, I decided to ask my best friend about what was going on with his wife. He listed a series of complaints Amanda had against me, including forgetting her birthday multiple times despite Facebook reminders, which she doesn't use, and the incident at the bar where I forgot to pick her up from the airport and left her alone. I explained to my friend that I tend to be absent-minded, and they should have been aware of that by now. I also mentioned that Amanda is overly sensitive and holds onto grudges. I reminded him that I had already apologized to her for everything, so I didn't understand why she was still upset. However, my best friend became angry and is now not speaking to me either. Do you think I'm the one in the wrong here?